An off-road SUV just drove into one of the biggest rivers on Earth, the Yangtze River, and instead of sinking, it floated across. 1,200 meters of open water, and 22 minutes later, it climbed out the other side and drove off like nothing happened. This is a production SUV, and you can walk into a Chinese dealership and buy right now for the price of a mid-spec Toyota. While Western brands are still arguing about who has the best hill descent control, Jetour built a 3-ton luxury off-roader that turns into a boat, makes its own oxygen, and puts out supercar power. This is the Zongheng G700, and it might be the most over-engineered vehicle on sale anywhere. Let's get into it. It literally crosses rivers. On October 16, 2025, the G700 became the first SUV in history to cross the Yangtze River under its own power. It launched from a ferry terminal in Wuhu, the city where parent company Sherry is headquartered, and floated 1,480 meters bank to bank in 22 minutes, fighting currents running between 5 and 10 kilometers per hour the entire way. It stayed stable, cruised at around 7 kilometers per hour across the surface, and reached the far side dry. To put that river in perspective, the Yangtze is the third longest river in the world, and at that crossing point, it runs deep enough and fast enough that a mistake would not have ended with a tow truck. The body is built seamless and hole-free, sealed well enough to resist real water pressure, so it simply does not let water in. A 6-axis gyroscope constantly adjusts the vehicle's balance in the water, the same principle that keeps a ship upright, and it can stay afloat for up to 40 minutes at a time. This is not wading through a flooded road. This is genuine amphibious capability in a car you can register and drive to work on Monday. The part that sounds made up: it has boat propellers. If floating is impressive, how it moves through the water is the detail that stops people cold. Mounted on each side of the rear are 2 military-grade turboprops, water propellers, each producing up to 18 kilowatts, together generating around 3,000 newtons of thrust. That is not a gimmick bolted on for a stunt. That is a purpose-built marine propulsion system integrated into an SUV from the factory. Most vehicles that claim water capability just spin their wheels and hope the tires paddle them along. The G700 has actual thrusters engineered to push it across open water against a moving current, which is why it managed a real river instead of a calm pond. Pair that with an 800-volt silicon carbide electrical architecture, the same high-voltage technology found in the most advanced EVs on the market, and you start to understand this was engineered as a serious piece of machinery, not a marketing exercise. Western off-roaders measure their water ability in inches of wading depth. This one measures it in minutes afloat. That is not an incremental improvement over a Land Rover. That is a completely different category of capability. The G700 is not a lone oddity. It is part of a pattern. BYD, through its luxury Yangwang brand, already sells the U8, a roughly 1,100 horsepower SUV that also floats. But the way the two do it reveals exactly how fast this technology is moving. The Yangwang U8's float capability is an emergency failsafe. If the car detects it has gone into deep water, it seals up and can stay afloat for around 30 minutes, paddling along at a walking pace of about 3 kilometers per hour using its wheels, purely to get you back to solid ground in a flood or an accident. BYD explicitly says it is not for crossing lakes and rivers, and after you use it, you have to take the car to a service center for inspection. Now compare that to the G700. Jetour did not build an emergency failsafe. It built dedicated turboprops and deliberately drove the thing across the Yangtze as a demonstration of intended capability. In roughly 2 years, Chinese amphibious SUV technology went from a passive get-out-of-the-flood safety net to a purpose-built system that crosses one of the largest rivers on Earth on command. That is the speed of iteration the West should actually be paying attention to, faster than the float feature itself. When 2 of the biggest Chinese auto groups are both building SUVs that swim, it is no longer a stunt. It is a race. Now the Land numbers, which are just as absurd. It runs a plug-in hybrid system built around a 2.0-liter turbocharged engine with a claimed 45.5% thermal efficiency. which is a genuinely high figure, paired with electric motors driving each axle through a 2-speed hybrid transmission. Combined output lands at 560 kilowatts, which is 751 horsepower, along with 795 newton-meters of torque. That is genuine supercar-level power in a boxy 3-ton off-road SUV. For reference, that is more power than a V8 Mercedes-AMG G63, in a vehicle that costs a fraction as much and can also float. And because it is a hybrid rather than a pure EV, a full tank and a full charge together deliver a claimed range of 1,400 kilometers. That number matters more than it looks. Range anxiety is the single biggest reason serious overlanders have avoided electric off-roaders, because a dead battery in the middle of nowhere is not an inconvenience, it is a genuine emergency. By keeping the engine, the G700 sidesteps that problem entirely and gives you the reach to actually disappear into the wilderness. The off-road hardware backs the numbers up. A body-on-frame chassis, which is the proper rugged construction serious off-roaders demand rather than a car-based unibody, 320 millimeters of ground clearance, a 35-degree approach angle, nearly a meter of wading depth even before you engage the boat mode, and double wishbone suspension with adaptive variable damping that firms up or softens depending on the terrain. It even carries a 2.5-ton towing capacity. This is a real off-roader first, and an amphibious showpiece second. The detail nobody expected: an oxygen generator. The G700 includes an external oxygen generator capable of producing up to 3 liters of oxygen per minute. Think about where that matters. High-altitude expeditions, the Tibetan Plateau, remote mountain passes, where the air gets thin enough to make people genuinely sick with altitude sickness. This is a vehicle designed to carry people into the most extreme, isolated environments on the planet and keep them safe once they get there. It is the kind of feature you only add when you are seriously imagining owners crossing deserts, rivers, and mountain ranges in a single trip, not just driving to a trailhead on a Saturday and back. Every choice here points at genuine expedition use, which is what makes it so different from the mall crawler luxury off-roaders it undercuts on price. If a boxy Chinese SUV that floats across rivers and makes its own oxygen is the kind of thing you want to see more of, hit subscribe, because the pace of what is coming out of China right now is genuinely hard to keep up with. This is not some no-name brand. Jetour is a brand under Chery, and Chery is not small. Chery has been the #1 passenger vehicle exporter in China for 23 consecutive years, and in 2025 alone, the group sold over 2.8 million vehicles and exported more than 1.3 million of them. On average, a Chery vehicle was exported somewhere in the world every 23 seconds that year. Chery also passed 5 million cumulative exports, the first Chinese automaker ever to do it. And Jetour on its own is a serious operation, selling over 600,000 vehicles in 2025, with its X70 SUV alone passing 1 million cumulative global sales. This matters because it means the G700 is not a science fair project. It is backed by one of the largest and fastest-growing car companies on Earth, with the manufacturing scale, the export network, and the engineering budget to actually build these things at volume and sell them across dozens of countries. Chery already sells vehicles across the Middle East, Russia, South America, Southeast Asia, and increasingly Europe. When a company with that kind of reach decides to build an amphibious off-roader, it is not a stunt. It is a statement of where it thinks the whole industry is going, and it has the distribution to put that statement in showrooms on multiple continents. The price is the real shock. All of this, the amphibious body, the boat thrusters, the 751 horsepower hybrid drivetrain, the 1,400 kilometer range, the oxygen generator, launched in China across 4 trims priced from roughly 330,000 to 415,000 yuan. In US dollars, that is about 46,000 to 58,000. Sit with that. A Land Rover Defender or a Mercedes G-Class starts well above that and climbs into 6 figures fast, and neither one can float, make oxygen, or match that combined range. The Yangwang U8 that floats in an emergency costs around $150,000, roughly 3 times the G700 starting price, and it will not deliberately cross a river. Jetour. secured over 10,000 pre-orders before the G700 even properly launched, which tells you the demand is real and not just internet curiosity. Now, the honest caveat, the same one that applies to every one of these Chinese launches. This is a China market vehicle at China market prices, and tariffs and regulations mean you will not be buying one in the US at that number anytime soon, if at all. The turboprops alone would likely run into a wall of Western safety and marine regulations. But the price is not really the point. The point is what it proves. A company most Westerners have never heard of just built something neither Land Rover nor Mercedes nor Toyota currently offers at any price, and sold it for the cost of a loaded family SUV. What this actually means. Step back from the river crossing spectacle, and there is a bigger story here, and it is the one that matters. For years, the comfortable assumption in the West was that Chinese cars competed on one thing: price, cheap, good enough, undercutting everyone. That story is now out of date. The G700 is not winning on price alone. It is doing things no Western vehicle does at any price. Floating across major rivers, generating oxygen for high-altitude travel, combining supercar power with 1,400 kilometers of range in a body-on frame off-roader. This is competition on capability and imagination, not just on cost, and that is a far more dangerous kind of competition for the established brands to face. And it is happening across the whole industry at once. BYD's supercars are setting records at the Nürburgring. Zeekr is matching Porsche on charging speed for a third of the price. Now Jetour is building SUVs that swim. The common thread is not that any single one of these will land in your driveway next year. It is that the pace of ambition coming out of China has fundamentally changed, and the legacy automakers who spent the last decade dismissing it are running out of time to catch up. The Zongheng G700 is probably not going to show up in your driveway. The gap between what Chinese automakers can build and what the established Western brands are still charging a premium for is closing fast, and in some areas it has already flipped. Would you actually drive one across a river? Drop it in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.